At 7:50 a.m. on the morning of the 16th of October, 2025, a column of 22 Russian armored vehicles, the largest subgroup counting 11 vehicles including tanks and armored fighting vehicles, had just moved out of the Malynivka area. They were quietly advancing toward Shakhove, the position where a Russian artillery cluster had been deployed to support a push toward Dobropillia. But none of them knew that every movement they made was being locked down by an electronic fire control network from across the border. From a ridge 9 kilometers to the southwest, a Furia reconnaissance UAV had trailed the column for 15 minutes, recording speeds, formation order, and the moment each vehicle crossed fixed markers. Its integrated FLIR sensors analyzed engine temperatures to determine which vehicles were heavily loaded and which served as command platforms. All data were encrypted and streamed straight to the Forward Artillery Control Center, where a 3-layer ambush plan was already set in place. On the commander's screen, the targets were clear. The lead group, 6 vehicles, 2 T-72B3s, 3 BMP-2s, 1 BRDM-2 reconnaissance vehicle. The center group, 8 vehicles, 2 BRM-1K command vehicles, 2 Ural 4,320 ammunition trucks, 3 MTLBs towing field repair trailers, 1 auxiliary fuel truck. The rear group, 8 vehicles, 3 BMP-3s, 2 T-90A tanks, 3 KAMAZ fuel trucks. The total estimated logistics load reached more than 15 tons of artillery rounds, explosives, fuel, and technical equipment. Among that load were approximately 12 tons of 122mm artillery rounds, roughly 320 to 360 shells, enough for the artillery cluster to sustain fire for 72 hours straight. 21,000 liters of diesel divided across the 3 KAMAZ trucks, sufficient to keep tanks, artillery, and mechanized units fueled for 2 to 3 days of continuous operations. A field repair node carried welding gear, recovery equipment, spare track sets, a generator, and technical first response systems for the front. Command and control, communications suites were mounted on the 2 BRM-1K vehicles, with the capability to coordinate artillery, UAVs, and infantry teams in the area. With just 22 vehicles, they could sustain the entire Dobropillia assault for 3 days, delivering deadly operational tempo, unless stopped. They moved in an organized manner at a cruising speed of 40 kilometers per hour, in a half-combat, half-logistics formation, having just left the cover of a fixed air defense complex. From this moment, the column would be alone for 20 to 25 minutes, exposed across an open depression framed by sparse reeds and pine forest, with no observation posts, before reaching the rally point on Shakhove's edge. During this stretch, the column hugged tree cover, hoping to remain concealed, but they did not know that, with a precision intelligence network, Ukraine already had the time of appearance, the route, and had designed a perfect trap to funnel them in. Recon teams had surveyed the route early. The road the column had to take, one side radar masked by forest, the other side open fallow fields without a turning point, was ideal to stage a 3-tier strike with near zero escape probability. Ukraine's kamikaze FPV detachments were emplaced at dawn. Each team consisted of 2 drones, concealed within abandoned residential structures north of Shakhove. Low terrain with dense shrubbery and crossfield rice beds, excellent for camouflage. Each drone carried a penetrator warhead weighing 2.5 to 3.0 kilograms, programmed to self-destruct after 4 minutes if it failed to hit. The guidance systems were tuned using orthophotos from the reconnaissance UAV, enabling the drones to fly low over the paddies, avoid RF exposure, and evade temporary emitter nodes the Russians had planted along the route. Meanwhile, an engineering team of Azov prepared remote detonated mines. The PTKM-1R and TM-62 charges were not primed to annihilate immediately, but to force a miscue from Russian commanders. When a front wheel struck a mine, the instinctive reaction is dispersion, or a veer into open ground, or a halt to assess. That is when formation gaps begin to appear. When a command vehicle or an ammunition truck is pushed out of the column's center, it becomes isolated, easily locked, and then the most vulnerable to destruction. The key that makes it all mesh is timing. 1 minute late, and the column might have reached civilian hamlets. 1 minute early, and the artillery would have missed the primary aim. But if struck at the exact instant, damaging just 2 to 3 core vehicles, the entire spearhead must stop. 3 kilometers away, a Mavic 3 drone was operating at an altitude of 120 meters, tilting to hold a tight tracking angle. GPS parameters, transmitted images, and target recognition algorithms allowed surveillance teams to lock onto distinct heat trails and the spacing between vehicles. In infrared imagery, the command vehicle glowed like a beating heart, hot and steady, due to continuous comms operation. The fuel truck at the rear lay tarped, but heat leaking from pressurized pumps showed as a long, bright streak against the cool ground. At the command center more than 10 kilometers from the scene, the indicators on the screens changed continuously. Wind, southwest. Beaufort 2. Visibility, 3,800 meters. Russian side, UAV not detected, fire control radar not active, EW not yet engaged. That was when the trap closed. Everything waiting for the column to advance exactly 1,400 meters further, waiting for the command vehicle to enter the clearing between 2 tree belts, where the artillery could obtain the cleanest lock, waiting for the lead track to grind down onto a pre-marked rut. At 8, Furia reported, column turning into the Shakhove intersection. A BMP-2 in lead accelerated. 2 tanks followed spaced 35 meters apart. The BRM-1K command vehicle rolled into the designated clearing. The coordinates had been marked 3 days earlier. In the command center, the Azov brigade commander hammered 2 encrypted lines. Go Alpha, confirm, BAT-M 270, target GR 6229, fire 1. The ambush was triggered. Immediately, M270 rocket artillery fired from positions behind Dobropillia. A salvo of M30A1 GMLRS cluster warheads was programmed to airburst, spreading lethal fragments down the corridor. 23 seconds later, warheads detonated simultaneously at 20 to 30 meters above the lead elements. A BMP-2 took hits. Its turret ring was wrecked. Smoke belched from the ammunition compartment. The crew abandoned through hatches. A BMP-3 suffered a left track hit, lost balance, and toppled across the furrow. One T-72B3 took a glancing fragment and veered into the field edge, losing mobility. The other T-72B3 was buffeted by near-explosion debris, not critically damaged, but peeled away from formation and forced to stop for checks. In less than 40 seconds after the first salvo, the marching order had collapsed. Vehicles rearward braked hard and streamed out to both sides of the fields. Internal communications were severed. Each vehicle element improvised, attempting to turn or find exit routes. While the formation was in chaos, a directional PTKM-1R mine detonated under the belly of an Ural 4320 ammunition truck. The rear axle was obliterated. Loose 122mm rounds were scattered. Secondary detonations ignited, producing a fire column nearly 10 meters high and a backward shockwave. The BRM-1K immediately behind took a heavy fragment hit to its radio mast. The command suite was wrecked. The vehicle careened into the field and jammed on its front gear. The second Ural was blinded by dirt and debris. The crew lost directional control. An MTLB towing a repair trailer tried to edge clear, but its tracks bogged in the mud. Remaining vehicles began to split into the fields seeking escape, not realizing those lateral routes were exactly where Ukraine had prepared more TM62 and PTKM-1R mines. Seconds after the column dispersed, a BMP-3 rolled onto a side mine and overturned. Its turret separated from the hull. Immediately after, a following T-90A steering into the same lane detonated another mine. Its nose collapsed, black smoke spurting from beneath. 3 more vehicles were removed from the fight. The column found itself trapped. Ahead, swamp. Behind, fire and wreckage. Every escape lane was blocked by the very detours the commanders had trusted. But the strike was not over. As the wounded formation writhed, the vultures arrived. At 8:10, 3 FPV suicide drones from the Azov Brigade, staged 2 kilometers from the ambush site, launched in a fan pattern. The first slammed into the BRM-1K from the southeast at 130 kilometers per hour, punching through the radio control box. The explosion was precise. The cabin disappeared. The central command node was erased. The second impact targeted the rear Kamaz fuel truck. The drone penetrated the tank compartment and detonated. A massive fireball erupted, black smoke blanketing the paddy. The third swung in from the west, locking on a BMP-2 that was rotating its turret. The drone struck the drive cluster, destroying the main gun control. A short, sharp detonation. From order to the final FPV hit, 6 minutes and 41 seconds. No return fire was recorded, no suppression, no relief. 10 minutes after the last strike, ground reconnaissance teams moved in from the north, using low-level drones and helmet cams to document the scene. Imagery confirmed, 9 armored vehicles destroyed completely, 4 AFVs immobilized, 4 vehicles abandoned, 4 vehicles unaccounted for. By 8:50, the entire Russian column in the Malynivka to Shakhove corridor had been neutralized. The Dobropillia strike severed the primary supply line for the Russian task group at Shakhove to Mikilske. Tanks and artillery waiting on resupply of shells, fuel, and repair parts from the struck column were now left dry. The Russian mechanized brigade tasked with the western push was forced to postpone its planned breakthrough, not for lack of manpower, but for lack of ammunition and fuel. In adjacent sectors, Ukraine recorded a 36% drop in Russian artillery rounds fired within 48 hours after the ambush. Some armored units canceled assault plans, shifted to passive defense, or requested resupply from the eastern flank. Logistic pressure shifted rearward, clogging an already strained Russian supply network. Organizationally, Dobropillia forced immediate Russian adjustments. The Malynivka route was designated a high-risk zone, forcing subsequent convoys to detour via Novodonetsky or secondary corridors, increasing transit time from 2 hours to 6 hours. Convoys were prohibited from traveling in large groups. They were split into small packets of 4 to 5 trucks, reducing per-move tonnage but creating transport congestion and sharply lowering throughput. Concurrently, escorts increased. More short-range air defense like ZSU-23s or Tor M2s, plus extra EW units. Escorts meant fewer combat units on the front line. Worst of all, every resupply corridor now required route clearance teams to open the way, making each mission longer, more manpower intensive, and twice as risky. These changes did not make Russia lose instantly, but they forced Moscow to expend time, fuel, and technical assets just to maintain the same operational tempo. In modern war, when tempo is cut and operating costs double without achieving breakthrough, you have begun to lose, even if not yet defeated. On the information front, Ukraine did not miss the opportunity. The Azov Brigade released a 2-minute UAV video the same day. The footage spoke for itself. A T-72 abandoned mid-road, turret cocked at 45 degrees like a broken neck, a BMP charred black with its track thrown 15 meters from the hull, the BRM-1K, the command center of the column, reduced to a smoking steel frame. Images spread fast across Telegram, military TikTok, Western press, and Russian opposition outlets. International media labeled it a textbook example of a multi-layered kill chain, from reconnaissance to EW, precision artillery, directional mines, kamikaze drones, and post-strike reconnaissance. Not a lucky hit, but an organized chain of destruction, layer by layer, minute by minute, roll by roll. The psychological impact was stark. When a well-organized column, with lead tanks, armed escorts, and repair vehicles, can be annihilated in 7 minutes by drones and precision rockets, the message is clear. Nowhere is safe. Troops abandoning vehicles and retreating on foot across fields is not a sign of tactical defeat so much as an attack on the organization of their campaign, the logistics backbone. For Ukraine, Dobropillia was more than a tactical success. It proved that even without air superiority or heavy firepower, they could slow a major offensive axis through data, organization, and real-time response. For Russia, it was a warning. Resupply convoys, even armored and escorted, are not immune to a pre-planned ambush built on behavioral analysis, geolocated coordinates, and tactical blind spots. In 2025, the Donetsk battlefield is no longer a place for mechanized columns to move in silence. A few minutes' lapse in vigilance can turn an entire formation into wrecks scattered in a field with no one able to recover them.